you don't want to wait till you're in a health crisis or that you're emotionally so burnt out that you suddenly have the aha moment, wow, I have not been good at taking care of myself. And that's a problem that a lot of people have.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 246. Today we're talking about how to recenter and replenish with Ora Nadrich. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark-Field's Mindful Mama mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting membership, and I'm the author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome, my friend. How are you hanging in there with all the craziness that is happening in the world? Holy moly. If you are listening to this real time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh my goodness, 2020. If you're in the future, you've probably read about and heard about 2020 plenty because this is the year everything went bananas. But we're in it now. I'm in it now. And dear listener, if you're in it now, I just want to acknowledge that this is crazy. There's so much going on. And it can be really hard to ground ourselves, to stay present. That's what mindfulness is all about, right? Is like giving us the ability to kind of surf the waves of life and stay present despite all the things that life brings us. But man, is life bringing us a lot. Holy moly. So it seems like even more important than ever that I'm bringing you this particular episode, of course. I'm going to be talking to Ora Nadrich, and she's the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking. She's the author of Live True, a mindful guide to authenticity, and Says Who, how one simple question can change the way you think forever. She's a certified life coach, thought coach, and mindfulness teacher specializing in transformational thinking, self-discovery, and mentoring new coaches as they develop their careers. But this is an important conversation for us today because the waves of life are happening quite a bit. And so how do we connect to ourselves authentically while this life is crazy like this, while we're parenting, which is a little crazy making just by itself? And I have to let you know that we recorded this conversation well before the craziness that happens to be fall 2020. But we have a powerful conversation about following this journey of self-awareness and grounding ourselves while developing more presence for our children. And it doesn't have to be difficult, but has to be consistent. And it has to be steady. And some things I want you to listen for are parenting and the journey of self-awakening can really be done at the same time. How behind every feeling, there is a connected thought. We dive much deeper into this. And how I don't have time for that is an excuse. Woo. So I'm so happy for you to join me at the table as I talk to Ora. Before I dive in, I have just a few spots left. I open up a very small group coaching program. It's only 6 people, high-level group coaching program. And this is for you if you want the accountability and support that it often really takes to make the changes you want to make, like making your own unstoppable meditation practice, really learning how to nurture yourself fully, really feeling seen and heard like never before, and learning parenting and communication skills that will radically improve your relationship, really learning to love and accept yourself deeply and completely, heal, grow, right? If you're saying, yes, 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 Hunter, maybe one of these spots is for you and is for people who want to work with me personally. And I develop a close relationship with each of my group coaching people. Again, it's a very, very small group. I keep it like that on purpose because I really want to get to know you. So it's this high level of working with me, and we may still have spots left. You can apply and join. at mindfulmamamentor.com/group coaching. And that's a great place to go. Like if you're curious and you're kind of on the fence and just to see what has happened for other people. I had one client, Ratika, who said that from day one, Hunter's lessons taught me how to be slower, calmer, and more peaceful. And she said that the practices she learned not only helped her in parenting, but affected other areas of her life, her physical health, how she shows up at work, how she felt very alone before. And this group made a huge difference in her life. Having other moms who are going through the same thing encourage and support you. And that she really discovered this incredible connection to herself. You know, it's powerful. It can really, really change things, right? It can give you a new perspective. So I invite you to check it out, mindfulmamamentor.com/group coaching. There might be spots left when you check it out. And if there are, I encourage you to join me. It would be lovely to move this relationship past the earbuds and the microphone and connect in real life via Zoom, but in real life. Heart to heart. I really do feel an incredible connection with everyone who joins. It's powerful. Enough about that. Let's talk to Ora Nadrich. So join me at the table as I talk to the one and only Ora Nadrich. Ora, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Thank you for having me, Hunter. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I'm excited to talk to you, and I don't know where to dive in because you have done an extraordinary amount of work and written a number of books, and I love your new book. But I guess what I'm curious about is like for somebody who's such a seeker and has been doing this work of mindfulness for so long, what I know to be true is that usually, at least for me and for a lot of people I know, that work usually comes out of some of our own struggle with whatever's happening in our lives. And I wonder if that's the same for you. Like as you started to go down this path of seeking and learning, was there something you were struggling with that kind of led you there?
Well, I do think there's an element of nature and nurture, if you will. I mean, I think my nature is such. When I think back to myself as a little girl, I really was the child that loved to lay in an open field of grass and look up at the sky and watch the clouds move across the sky. So for anybody that's familiar with mindfulness, that's one of the ways in which you can describe being in the present moment. Do you know? So I think that I already had a proclivity, if you will, to just being very aware. Okay, so that was probably just part of my inherent nature. And then fast forward to years later, I experienced a family crisis where one of my older sisters had a mental breakdown. And it was devastating. It was just traumatic for everyone, you know, and really tragic. And traumatic for me being the youngest of four. And when that had happened to her, I just went into total fight, flight, freeze. It was very shocking. It was very disturbing. And I didn't understand any of it. And so what happened was that as the years continued on, you know, fast forward, because it's a lengthy story, and I talk about it in my first book, Says Who, how one simple question can change the way you think forever, which is a cognitive process for transforming negative and fear-based thoughts. When that happened to my sister and I went into that fight, flight, freeze, as I say, I didn't realize that I had buried a thought in my psyche, if you will, that was very fear-based. And so what happened was, I say, when thoughts go not tended to, if you will, you can experience the side effects or the symptoms of a troubling thought. And it took me on a deep psychospiritual journey. I was an actress for 10 years and I started to have deep anxiety and I didn't know why. So it really took me, as I said, on this psychospiritual journey to find out why I was experiencing, you know, this anxiety that was actually impeding my career. And I went into analysis. I went into Jungian analysis, and I also really went onto a search of the workings of the mind. I very much wanted to understand the workings of the mind, because in relation to my sister, it didn't make sense to me that she could be fine one day and then never the same again. So on my deep journey of understanding myself and taking that inner journey of self-realization, I came upon mindfulness. And the minute I began to learn about mindfulness and read about Buddhism and Taoism and, really understand what it means to be present, I knew that I was really connecting to something that felt very resonant to me. And it was something that I wanted to understand more and more and to integrate it into my work. Became a certified mindfulness meditation teacher, and the basis of my work is very mindfulness oriented. It's really the thrust of all the work that I do.
I can relate to so much in your story, and I'm really sorry about your sister and her suffering. It's amazing to think about how these moments of great suffering are these catalysts for these incredible journeys of understanding, right? Like we're always like, no, we don't want these things, but they end up becoming these catalysts for learning, which I really, really appreciate. You said you had uh, a fear-based thought in your psyche. Do you remember what exactly that? I'm sure you've probably written about it. So like, what was that thought?
Yes.
Do you remember?
And that's exactly the thought that was buried within the subconscious, if you will, which is like the storage or the basement of thoughts that we bury. And sometimes they're just not made conscious to us until something like, as I say, a symptom of that troubling thought starts to rear its head. And yes, specifically it was that when that happened to her, the thought that came to the foreground of my mind was, oh my God, if that can happen to her, that can happen to me. So I over-identified with what had happened to her. And there really was no understanding for me at the time. I had no reference point, if you will, for really separating myself from what was, to my understanding, with a lot of deep analysis, that was her path and it was separate from my path. And that because that tragedy had happened to her, it didn't mean that it was going to invariably become my destiny. So it took me many, many, many years, as I said, on a deep psychospiritual journey to connect to that fear-based thought, which I call like the boogeyman. There's something that can really plague our minds and our hearts for many, many years, and we don't know it. It's not made conscious to us. So that was a thought that I had, which was, again, a thought that was born out of fear, deep fear, because of what had happened to her. And once I was able to confront that fear and do the necessary work to work through the shadow complex of it, I was able to be free from it.
Yeah. So you had to face it, had to look at it, and all of those things. And you also mentioned Jungian analysis, and I would just love to for the listener who may have heard of it, but doesn't know what is this. Can you give a brief description of kind of what that process is kind of centered around and how it worked for you?
Yeah, so Carl Jung was a psychoanalyst, and his work is, for me, I felt it was divine providence that I was led to Jungian psychoanalysis, because it really goes into the depths of the unconscious. It's very transformational, and it's depth psychology, which means it really goes into the depths of our being, into the unknown, into the unconscious, if you will. And I think his work is absolutely extraordinary as far as, and for me, very resonant to mindfulness, because it's really making the unconscious conscious. And with mindfulness work, mindfulness is really being aware of ourselves, and so that means being aware of what's conscious, but also being cognizant of what perhaps needs to be delved into deeper, which is the unconscious. So his work is very much about that. His work is for anybody who's familiar with Carl Jung, I mean, it just covers so many areas of the psyche, and again, getting to know who you are into the depths of oneself, which is, again, the unconscious, the shadow aspects of the personality, which are aspects of the personality that maybe are hidden or buried, or we reject aspects of ourselves that we don't particularly like. And also his work in dream interpretation, which, as a big dreamer myself, I was always somebody who was a big dreamer. I felt that his work was, you understand, that his work was really perfect for me, because I was I've always been very much into deep dream analysis and amplification and interpretation of the dreams, which is our unconscious and what our conscious is trying to tell us. So I have just the utmost incredible gratitude for the work of Carl Jung, and the fact that I was able to go into that is the work that I needed to do to get to know myself better.
I love the description of your journey, and I appreciate that description of Jungian analysis. I have a friend actually who's a Jungian analyst, and I've always been a little bit curious about her work. And now I'm curious about this. Like you're doing this work, like you were struggling with this anxiety and doing this work to kind of understand it. I know that you're a parent. There's a messy middle in there, right? Somewhere, right? Like as we start to like kind of go through this work, where was having kids for you along the timeline and of this journey?
That's such a good question. And I think that I don't think anybody's ever really asked me that before. And what comes to mind immediately is I remember when I was on a deep psychospiritual journey, I felt so committed to that. I felt that it was a life journey of work, which it is, by the way. But I remember at a time thinking that I didn't want anything to take me away from the journey of self-awareness or self-realization, if you will, or even the journey of awakening. And I wasn't sure at one point, like, well, how are children going to fit into this? Do you know? If I'm really committed to the journey of self-awakening or self-awareness, if you will, and just becoming a more conscious human being on the planet, are these going to be mutually exclusive? Like, can I be a mom and still continue my journey? And I could. And that was really illuminating for me. I mean, it wasn't that I was in the depths, the deep throes, if you will, of, constantly contemplating, on an existential level, the meaning of life and my purpose here. I was also doing all my mommy chores and raising two boys that I think I did a pretty good job. And that one can have a whole life, a full life, and be able to do something like parenting, and then to take all of the work that I had learned on my journey and hopefully add to that in my parenting. Do you know?
Absolutely.
So it really helped me tremendously to become a much more present mother, if you will. Do you know, I was able to take a lot of the things that I learned on my journey and bring them into, again, my life as a parent, co-parenting. And now I find, since my boys are older, that I speak a lot about mindfulness with them, and things like mindfulness meditation, without shoving it down their throats, because no kid wants that. But that I see that the work that I do is something that they're getting a deeper understanding of, which really just touches my heart.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. A lot, I personally don't struggle with this, but a lot of people who listen to the Mindful Mama podcast struggle with giving themselves time to sort of like do this work, to sit in meditation, to take that, because it takes some slowing down, it takes some reflection, it takes, and we have these lives where our culture is sort of pushing us to be ever busier and busier and just more and more squeezed. And I think what you're speaking to the benefits of that in a lot of ways, that this journey of self-awareness and awakening. And I'd like to interject here for the listener who doesn't, that the term awakening, like you're talking about awakening from like sort of like the dream, right? That we're kind of in, where we're thinking that these sort of some of the things in our culture that tell us are important, right? And like kind of looking at what's really important, kind of awakening that awareness to just understanding ourselves, right? And that this work really does feed parenting. It really does. That slowing down doesn't take away from our kids, that it really does feed that whole process in general.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think that, for, whatever stage of parenting you're at, whether you're a new parent of a newborn and you're just embarking on this journey of parenting, or you have kids at whatever age they are at, the understanding, especially the understanding of mindfulness and what it brings into learning how to be a more present human being as well as a more present parent is invaluable. Do you know, especially at a time when not only can parents feel very stressed out, and, you know, depending on how many kids you're tending to or what's going on in the home, I think having or integrating mindfulness skills is so helpful for the parent. You know, in the beginning stages of learning how to regulate your time, you know, let's say as a new parent to the process and feeling so exhausted or full or so stressed, or having thoughts that might come in as a parent, like, I don't know if I'm going to be good at this. Am I doing this the right way? Do you know, there's the beginning stages of mindful awareness of how to be a new parent. Then there's the different stages of parenting where you go into the stages of when children are developing and evolving, and how do you then take those mindfulness skills and apply it then you go through the different passages of time and stages of, you know, the empty nest. I remember writing my first article, you know, really in the area of mindfulness as I called it the half empty nester, because one of my boys was going off to college. And I suddenly found myself so aware of all these emotions that I was feeling. And I really didn't know what to do with all these feelings. You know, I've heard about the empty nest, you know, but suddenly I'm experiencing it for the first time. So I think if you take mindfulness into all these stages and phases of parenting, wow, it is so powerful and so helpful to understand not only yourself better, but to understand yourself in the role of a parent.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. Your family has adapted to a lot of change this year. And with some creative problem solving, you've discovered new ways to tackle life's day to day. And while this Halloween may look a little bit different, the treats don't have to stop at candy. No tricks. With KiwiCo's hands-on science and art projects, your ghoulies won't go batty with boredom. Instead, they'll be inspired by KiwiCo's seriously fun and innovative creative problem solving crates delivered right to your door every month. No bones about it. I love these projects and my children love these projects. But today I don't want to tell you about one my children did. My friend has a younger child. I think her daughter's 4, and they have been doing the wonderful, wonderful Koala Crates. These are so cute, and these are little crates for hands-on learning for 2 to 4-year-olds, and they have the most beautiful projects that kids put together and assemble. They basically can do it completely all by themselves, and I love this one. They have one about a doctor's visit. They assemble and decorate a medical kit complete with thermometer, stethoscope, and plenty of felt bandages, and it is so cute. It teaches them empathy and caring for others. It is wonderful. KiwiCo has crates for every single age, and my 13-year-old has done crates where she's made these higher end projects like a ukulele and a lockbox. They are so cool. So your child can get these super cool hands-on science, art, and geography projects delivered to their door every month, and they'll be so excited to see these arrive in the mail, especially at a time when they might be unable to go to fun places like museums and stuff. Here's really fun activity that comes straight from them. So you'll be surprised at how high quality the materials are too. These are real engineering, science, and art projects for kids. There's different crates for different ages, like I've said, so there's something for every kid on your list. And there's no commitment, so you can pause or cancel anytime. KiwiCo is redefining learning with hands-on projects that build confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills. There's something for every kid or kid at heart at KiwiCo. Get 30% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line with the code HUNTER at kiwico.com. That's 30% off your first month at kiwico.com. Promo code HUNTER. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And now I wonder if, like, from your experience, from my experience, what I find is that my mindfulness practice that, that I've been practicing for a long time now, 15 years. And what I find is that it just gives me this space to hold it all. I feel broader in a lot of ways, where all of those life has all of those difficulties, right? All of those emotions you describe as the empty nest, but that space to kind of hold that. And it's sometimes I find myself having difficulty kind of like talking about this, right? Because it's not like the benefits of mindfulness. It's not like you're suddenly like there are sparkles shooting out of your ears and you're just like happy all the time. You're constantly content, right? That's not so. But for me, I guess I would describe it as like having this like space to hold these things. And I guess I'm not fighting with the things that arise. And so then they pass away more quickly. Is that how you would describe it? Or maybe you can add to that.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. It really helps us really understand all of the things that we're feeling, and that doesn't mean, when you talk about things like mindfulness or positivity or anything that really connotes, staying positive all the time or staying present, I think it really doesn't cover the fact that we're human. I love my favorite quote. One of them is by the French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, So one of the greatest human experiences is birthing children, and we're going to have times where we're going to feel a lot of different things, as I said, feeling stressed or feeling short. Our fuse can be short with our children, or we just don't feel that we have that extra reserve. We can feel that we're on empty. So with mindfulness, what that does is it gives us that moment to pause, that moment to take that much needed breath, so that we can stop and go, I'm really, really, short-tempered in this moment. I'm really feeling that my well is empty. I haven't had an opportunity to replenish my own well because I'm giving out so much to my family. What it does is it gives us this awareness of what we need. We may not be able to take it in that moment, but what we can do is, I always say that there's another moment that we could circle back to. Your baby can be napping. They can be sleeping, where we take these moments these mindful moments that we need for ourselves. What do I need in this moment to replenish, to refuel, to refill the well, so that I can go back then and give out again to my family? So I think that that's certainly what I think is extremely helpful. One of the ways is to always be aware, or try to the best of my ability to be aware of what I'm feeling. And what I say about feelings, behind every feeling, there's a thought connected to it. And sometimes we're so taken over by the emotionality of what we're experiencing that we don't even know what thought is connected to it. So something as simple as really feeling very emotional, whether you feel like you're about to burst out crying, or you're feeling resentment because maybe you don't feel that your partner's helping you, or you're feeling anger, or just sadness. You might wake up one day and just, especially as we know with parenting, or with new parents, or new mothers, I should say, many of them have experienced postpartum depression, and they don't know what to do with that. So again, this is where mindfulness, I think, is so valuable, that it helps us have an understanding of what we're feeling, experiencing, or thinking in the moment, and how to tend to that, and how to give ourselves the self-care that we need ultimately.
I couldn't agree more. And what I've noticed that comes up for many people is this, you talk about replenishing and taking care of and tending to ourselves. What I know sometimes is a sense of like, especially in women, a deep sense of like, am I not worthy of kind of taking this time? Am I not worthy of this replenishment? And this feeling that, I may not, I'm not worthy of this, maybe this daily time that I'm dedicating to a practice, or, of diving deeper in different ways, investing time and energy into self-awareness and self-awakening feels selfish to them. It feels like that's their value isn't enough to do that. So when you encounter that, what kind of process do you lead people down to kind of understand those feelings and to work through them?
Well, I think it's really important to recognize the need for self-care. first of all, and I don't think there's anything selfish or me-centric about that. Okay. When we're talking about taking care of ourselves, that to me is very important. And I don't think that one needs to apologize for that. I don't think of self-care in the area of being overindulgent. I mean, if you're just taking a bath all day or just getting massages, which doesn't sound all that bad, but you know what I mean? It's like, giving ourselves, tending to ourselves in a way that, again, is about the self-nourishment or the self-care or the replenishing, yes, to specifically address what you're asking me as far as this, whether it's feeling one is worthy of even that. The problem with that is that some people feel they don't deserve that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember having conversations with friends of mine, some of them very dynamic women, very high achieving women. And there used to be this running joke amongst me and some of my girlfriends. They were like, "Oh, Ora, you're so good at that. You're good at like getting a massage and you're good at like, taking walks." I'm thinking, I don't have a corner on this. Like, you too could be taking care of yourself too. And for some reason, they just would feel as though, which is one of the biggest things that most people feel is, well, I don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that ends up being an excuse because we can make time,
Mm-hmm.
And, when you talk about, Hunter, specifically to, I don't feel that I deserve this, it's pretty amazing how many people feel they really don't deserve giving themselves the self-care that they need. The problem with that is oftentimes people that neglect self-care, when something really starts to become imbalanced in their life and they're overly stressed, and then they start to experience what I call the symptoms of not tending to what needs to be tended to, you don't want to wait till you're in a health crisis or that you're emotionally so burnt out that you suddenly have the aha moment that like, wow, I have not been good at taking care of myself. And that's a problem that a lot of people have. I've encountered it a lot.
Yeah, that whole mommy martyr idea is so toxic. It really drives me bananas. So when people are starting, you've taught mindfulness for a while. You talk about the value of that. When people, what do you say for people to help them start out a practice?
I really like to begin with saying that mindfulness can start first thing in the morning when you wake up and you open up your eyes, literally. And that's something, I think there's this sort of mythology around meditation, if you will, that you have to sit down in the lotus position for 45 minutes. As somebody who started transcendental meditation when I was 19, I did sit down for 20 minutes twice a day. And it was a great discipline that helped me become a disciplined meditator. I'm not saying everybody has to do that. Some people have a meditation practice and that's great, but there's so many mindful things you can do and integrate in your day that I might really add takes very little time. For example, you wake up in the morning, most people want to jump out of bed. It's the first thing they want to do. Now, I'm not saying maybe for you have to get on the freeway and get to work. You got to make sure your kids are off to school and give your husband a hug or your partner before you go out of the house. There's a lot of things on our plates and we're busy people. But if you literally can open your eyes, I know you can't do this all the time, but try and do it at least as much as you can. When you open your eyes for the first few seconds upon awakening, and you can literally take less than a minute and go, wow, I'm alive one more day, and drop into gratitude. How long does it take to be in gratitude? Like, you don't even want to put a time to it. Just having the awareness that you wake up and you take that moment of complete gratitude for connecting to the breath. I even say if you want just to connect to your breath, put your hands on your heart chakra, feel the rising and falling of your breath, and maybe say silently to yourself, I feel grateful that I am alive one more day. If that's your jump start, if you just start with something like that, then you're going to really you're going to set the tone for your day. And I really encourage people to start, whether it's doing it in bed, whether it's taking a shower and you're not hurried and rushing to clean your body or wash your hair, smell that body wash. Smell the shampoo or feel your hands going through your scalp, massaging your scalp as you're washing your hair. There are so many beautiful, even some of the littlest things that we can do that bring us into present moment awareness. And we're like, okay, I'm here. I'm here in this moment. I'm grateful. I'm gifting my senses with smelling the body wash, smelling the shampoo. One of my first articles for Huffington Post was your morning cup of tea or coffee can be your meditation. So I said, sit with that cup of tea or coffee and feel the warmth of it in your hands. Feel the warmth of it and how it feels when it touches your lips. Feel the warmth of it when it first is in your mouth, when you take that first taste of it and it goes down your throat. Mindfulness in eating is huge. We eat, most of us eat 3 meals a day. There's, again, so many things that you can do to embark on this mindfulness practice. And I don't like to dumb it down, but what I want to say is that some of the simplest mindfulness tips that you can integrate are some of the deepest, So I really encourage people to start today. I say mindfulness can start today.
Yeah, exactly. When you turn this podcast off, put your feet on the ground, take your headphones out and feel your feet on the ground. That's a mindfulness practice right there. But you're right. And these things are not they're simple, but not necessarily easy. Like for me, I can sit down and do 30 minutes of meditation in the morning, but I find it really hard to have a cup of coffee without reading the paper, right? Because that's just a strong habit of mine, so
you and millions of other people, by the way, we tend to multitask. And one thing I just want to add to that, Hunter, is in Live True, my newest book, is I have something called life gazing.
Oh yeah. I like the life gazing. Tell us about it.
That just takes literally, and by the way, if we want to stay on the mothering note, your baby, you could literally be breastfeeding your baby and looking out the window and watching the clouds moving across the sky, or see the hummingbirds outside your window, or maybe if it's raining, noticing the rain as it starts to pitter patter on the window. With work, as you just said, we need to put our devices down. We need to, if it means going outside and feeling the grass under your feet. So these are life-gazing moments, and those are other moments that take sometimes less than a minute to do. So I encourage people to pause, stop in their day, and do something like life gaze. Just it's so simple, it's so easy to do, and you can replenish. That's part of going back to how you can replenish, how you can fill the well back up.
Yes, exactly. The value of, we talk about these simple moments, and the value of these is huge. When you stop multitasking and are present and practice being present, it's like a muscle that you build, and then you can be present for the times when you do actually want to be present, right? And you're not, if we're always racing to get to the next thing, then we finally get to our Caribbean vacation or whatever we've been wanting to get to forever and ever and ever. And then your brain is just trained to go to the future and not be satisfied where you are. It's about being able to live your life with presence, and it benefits everyone. It benefits your kids enormously.
Absolutely. And it's also what I love to talk about is make this moment enough. Let this moment be enough for you. Find your enoughness. I do an enough meditation where I guide people into, really connecting to the moment that they're in right now and really feeling that moment and acknowledging that it's enough. We're always, as you just said, it's like we're racing to get to the vacation and we're hurrying to get over here and we can't wait to do this. There's nothing wrong with having excitement and anticipation for what's going to come. But, we have to be very mindful of how we're escaping the moment. We're always thinking that the next moment is going to be better, or we're thinking of ways to top this moment, which really can become very compulsive, if you will. We want to be very mindful of how we are not really okay or allowing this moment to be enough. We don't have to keep piling more on top of it.
Yes. Amen. And you don't have to feel a certain way. No sparkles are required to come out of your ears during this moment. I love what you talk about. I'd love to kind of turn the direction of thoughts, because as we start to sit with ourselves and all our fidgety energy, and we start to notice, right? We notice, and for me anyway, I had a good stretch of 8 years where I was I would sit with meditation. I'd be like, oh, planning. Oh, planning. Oh, planning, constantly planning. And, this awareness of thoughts. And you also talk about, and I think you talk about it in the Says Who method, the idea of being selective of our thoughts. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about this, because sometimes I have a problem with the idea of this, because thoughts just come unbidden, right, into our brains.
Yeah,
We have the good, the bad, the ugly, the selfish, all this stuff just arrives in our brains, and people feel personally responsible for oh, I'm a terrible person because I had this thought, right? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the nature of these thoughts that arise, and then this method of being selective of your thoughts.
Yeah, we think approximately between 40 and 70,000 thoughts a day. Now, we're not cognizant of all those thoughts, but what that tells us is that our mind is extremely busy, that it's extremely, extremely busy. Sorry about that. Thought I turned off all my devices. Anyway, that we're thinking. So we know that that's part of the mind's activity, and that it's, there's something there's a Buddhist term called the monkey mind. And you think of a monkey that's jumping from branch to branch to branch, well, the mind can be like that. It's over here and it's over there. It's thinking about this. Oh, what am I going to have for dinner? What about tomorrow? Oh, I can't believe that happened 3 weeks ago. So, the mind, there's a research that was out of Harvard that the mind wanders almost 50% of the time. So, it lets us know that our mind does wander. I don't think it's about this, I think a lot of people in meditation feel like, I gotta stop my thoughts. They just will not stop, It's a lot easier to give ourselves the permission to observe our thoughts rather than to try and stop them. It's like trying to put a plug in our mind somehow,
Yeah.
Having an awareness of our thoughts gives us the ability to, what I say, pick and choose the thoughts that are useful for us and the thoughts that don't serve our well-being. We are all going to have, as you said, thoughts that are going to pop up in our mind. And like you said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I mentioned that in Says Who, I say, own your thoughts, all of them, not just the pretty ones. Be aware of the thoughts that we have. By having an awareness, it's kind of like this witness consciousness, if you will, so that if or when a thought pops up, those automatic thoughts that invariably will pop up in your mind, you're like, well, where did that just come from? Have an awareness of oh, wow, okay, that thought was really judgmental, or, ooh, that thought was really critical, whether it's of yourself or someone else. Oh, that thought, wow, I'm feeling a lot of fear right now. I've got a lot of fearful thoughts right now. What's going on? What am I so afraid of? Dig a little bit deeper and find out that those fear-based thoughts might be because you're maybe afraid about something that you're going to do tomorrow. Well, to bring your awareness to the understanding that you're afraid of something that might or could happen in the future, how can you bring your focus and awareness to the moment right now and say, I understand that I'm feeling fearful and I've got a lot of frightened thoughts right now. What are the thoughts that I can really pick to occupy my mind, if you will, that are going to support me right now in this moment of now? I even describe it as curating your thoughts, which is a kind of more fancy way of wow, I get to actually pick and choose the thoughts that I want to have and the thoughts that I want to let go of. And I use the analogy of when you go to a museum and you're going to, let's say, go see a retrospective or an exhibit of a great artist. What we see is usually the best of that artist's art.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what's put together, is really the best of the artist's work, if you will. And for many people who feel so separate from their mind, it's like, my mind is thinking me, I'm not thinking my thoughts. I say, no, actually, it's really not like that. We can pick and choose our thoughts. And if a thought comes up that's unpleasant, or as I like to say, one of the questions of the Says Who method, do I like this thought? That's one of my Says Who questions. It's the easiest question in the world. Do I like this thought? To be able to say, I actually really don't. How can I replace it with a thought that's more likable? We can change a negative or an unpleasant thought and switch it out for its positive counterpart, because it's going to feel different in the body. We all know what unpleasant or negative thoughts feel like. They don't feel so good.
Well, so I know a lot of people struggle with this idea of this kind of positive thoughts versus sort of like reality and truth, right? Where many people feel like this critical thought, well, what if it's the truth, right? What benefit is there for me to be like choosing a positive thought if this like more judgmental critical thought is true and feels really true to them?
Well, let me just be able to discern between having judgmental or discerning thoughts, if you will, to how it's making you react. We're going to have a plethora of thoughts. That's part of just being human. And depending on what we're putting our focus and attention on, it's okay to have a judgmental thought about something that helps us really understand the difference between something that feels right to us or something that feels wrong. But when it starts to turn against you in some way, or it starts to turn you against someone else, then that's when I feel that thought is taking over. And we're doing something called reacting to that thought. So for me, what I find really helpful is to be able to discern. It's not saying you're never going to think a negative thought again. It's when that negative thought starts to create a reaction in you that becomes more negative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Like, is it helpful? Maybe then is a better question than is it true? Would you say?
Well, yes. Or if I'm thinking that it's true, how is it helping me? Is it helping me understand this situation better? With everything that's going on right now, we're dealing in an unprecedented time, and there's so much going on. We're being bombarded. There's so much information that we're taking in. Some people are watching the news all day. There's a lot of alarming things that are being presented to us. So many people find themselves really, confused or very, upset or worried or angry. It's okay to really work that out in your mind. But what I like to say is it helps me personally when I'm starting to feel the stirrings of an emotion. Why is it evoking that in me? And how can I help myself learn more about the thing that I might be judging, or learn more about the thing that's maybe making me feel anxious or making me feel a type of anger that can help me understand better about something that I might not know about. Do you know what I mean? It's helpful for us to not stay stuck with what we're thinking or feeling if it's in a downward spiral. It's not helping us in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. I found myself actually a couple days ago on my run, like in sort of a spiral of thoughts. And for me, my practice in that moment is like, is a Zen kind of saying, which is, I am here, I am here. And then I would just look around, where am I? Oh, I am here. Like, look at this tree. Here's this bridge. Here's what's coming on, like, this what I'm obsessed with is just stories that are in my head. They're not reality. How can I come back to the reality of here and now and try to sort of undercut that spiral?
That's really a helpful, tool to use for sure. And I think that, for example, like when you're being so inundated and bombarded with information, I think it's really great to root and to ground oneself in the present moment. And a great way to do that is to say, feel the grass under my feet, look at the sun setting, hug a tree literally, or go sit under a tree, or what can I do, or feel the sand on the beach under your feet. What the things that get us worked up are usually things that we're reacting to. And so I find telling myself, one of the ideas of replacing a thought, a negative thought, with its positive counterpart, for me, sometimes is me saying to myself, I just don't have all the information right at this moment. And I'm going to accept that. Mindfulness is being in the present moment with total awareness, acceptance, and non-judgment of what is in the moment right now. So what can be very helpful, whether you're using something like nature to ground you, or bringing your focus and awareness into what is happening in this present moment right now, sometimes there's things to tell ourselves when we're feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I'm going to ground myself by doing something like, again, doing something physical, or telling myself something like, I don't have all the information I need right now, or I need a little bit more time, or I need to heighten my awareness a little bit more in this area that I might be feeling reactive to. So this, again, Hunter, goes into all the different ways in which we can help ourselves bring ourselves into the present moment with more equanimity,
Mm-hmm.
and give ourselves the permission to not have to respond or react to anything in that moment, in the very moment that we find ourselves in, and that it's okay.
Yeah. So you're saying like these thoughts arise and they feel so urgent. They feel so important. Like we have to struggle with them like right in this moment. And what you're saying is like, we can give ourselves permission to just not struggle. Like we may not have all the information. I love what you're saying about like, I just don't have all the information. For me, there's another Zen saying that that helps me. I say to myself, clear mind, clear mind. Clear mind, don't know. Don't know, because there's so much I don't know. And our minds just really do want to figure things out. They do want to kind of tell the story and figure it all out right now, right?
Yeah, very much so. Like problem solving. Our minds are very geared towards, very solution oriented, very much problem solving, which is sometimes why we need to create more problems to think we have to solve them. So, these Zen sayings that you're mentioning, which I have many that I love myself, whatever that inner mantra or that inner piece of wisdom, that pearl that you can tell yourself in the moment, I am in this moment of now. Now is all there is. This moment is enough. I don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
I need more information. I accept the moment that I'm in right now, with peace and self-love. I mean, there's so many things that we can tell ourselves that really brings us back to the moment. And that's what I think is most helpful for people, because of the tendency for the mind to wander, because of the fact that we're being bombarded daily with so much stimuli. We really need to give ourselves the permission, and the way in which we can sort of regroup with ourselves or recenter ourselves is to take that pause, to take that breath, to do the things that we can that help ground us, that help bring us back to center, to bring us back to, present moment awareness again. So many things that we can do that can really help us.
Well, I really appreciate your book, Live True, because it has so many of these little sayings that are really helpful about coming back to the present moment. So if you, dear listener, are looking for, well, Hunter's got her Zen sayings and Ora's got her sayings. If you want some sayings, there's some wonderful, wonderful pieces in Live True. I feel like I could kind of pick your brain forever about all of these things, and I really kind of enjoy this conversation. But I definitely want to respect your time. I would say please go check out the book, dear listener. And Ora, do you have any final things you want to share with the listener before we wrap it up? And
I really want to share with the listener that each and every one of us has the inherent quality of mindfulness. We have the ability, it's just there waiting to blossom. It's like the lotus flower that just wants to open up, and we do need to keep in mind that the lotus flower comes out of muddy waters. So you can start today, and don't put any expectations on yourself of what you think starting today means. What I mean by that is be present with yourself. And what I like to encourage people to do is to find some time in your day just to sit quietly, whether you're a meditator and you have a practice or you don't. throughout my day, I find myself just taking these pauses, these breaks, where I just sit quietly, whether it's, I said, look out the window or go outside and life gaze, sit down quietly, focus on the breath, maybe tell ourselves those inner words of wisdom. Start with anything that resonates for you. It doesn't have to look like anything, special or different or unique. It's what you bring to the moment, because you're special and unique. So bring your own mindful awareness of self to whatever moment you're in, and you will discover something about yourself and connect to something in yourself that is so uniquely you. And I just welcome you to this journey of finding yourself more present in the moments of your life.
Yes. And as we create this peace in ourselves, we create it for everybody. We're all interconnected and Ora, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I love your Live True book. And where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
And thank you, Hunter, so much for having me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. The best place to find me is my website, oranadrich.com. It really pretty much has everything I'm doing on it, and it's just got a lot of stuff there that I think people can just check it out, see what they discover on it.
Awesome. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
I just love Ora's calm presence from the other side of this parenting roller coaster, just assuring us that this can be done. This work can be done at the same time. It's beneficial for our kids, and that I don't have time for that is an excuse. I love it. So thank you so much for listening. And I want to thank you, everyone who reaches out to me. I really, really appreciate that. The reviews I get on Apple Podcasts and other places, thank you so much for those. Those really matter a lot. It's a great way to support the podcast. So I want to give a shout out to Megan TW, who left a 5-star review saying that she downloaded episodes after purchasing and starting Raising Good Humans and has truly helped me learn and practice. Yay! You're welcome, Megan. Thank you for that 5-star review. And thank you so much to Hyoba, and another 5-star review saying that she loves the podcast and loves every single expert I've had. Each of them brings such richness. So cool. Thank you so much, Hyoba. I would love to give you a shout out, leave a review. And like I said in the intro, if you are interested in taking a relationship, pass the microphone and the earbuds, whatever you are listening to this on. I would love to do that. I offer just a very small group coaching program, just 6 people. I keep it super small on purpose. And if you are interested in really diving into getting the accountability from me and the support you need to really do this work from October 28th through March 3rd, go check it out at mindfulmamamentor.com/group coaching. And I'm wishing you a great week. I hope that you surf the waves of this crazy fall of 2020, or of the waves of whenever you are listening in the future. Hello to the future. And do those practices. Our brains left to themselves are a little cray-cray sometimes, so we got to practice to ground them and steady them and steady our hearts and minds. And we can do that. We can do that work. It's doable. And I'll be doing it with you. I really, really appreciate your presence. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Have a great week. Namaste.